meeting to order. Note that Commissioner Ross and myself are in the chambers. Commissioner Knopf, Commissioner Ayan, and Commissioner Falk are all on via Zoom. And so the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Okay,
from January 5th, 2021.
Okay, there's an approval of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any comments? If there are no comments, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the minutes of January 5th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the order of the agenda.
Madam Chair, this is Tom. I've got a motion. I would like to move to add juvenile detention to 5D right after the sheriff. There's a matter that's come up in the last 24 hours we need to address today.
All right, we will add juvenile detention to 5D. Anything else, Commissioner Falk?
No, thank you.
Okay, do you approve the minutes with that change?
I do.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there are no comments, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Notice there are bills, employee status changes, and some overtime. Would anybody like any of that pulled? There's a request to have those items pulled. May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move for approval.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second, Tom.
Any discussion? If there is no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. The next item on the agenda is Sheriff Schneider.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I come before you with three items today. Is this on? Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. The first thing that I would like to address with the commission is a grant, a DAG grant that was approved in 2020 by the Sheriff's Office, and the commission signed off on that grant. Just a quick background on the grant. We were contacted after the city failed to apply for the grant, and we were asked if we wanted to. We were awarded the entire amount. It was brought to our attention a couple weeks ago that the initial email to the city police department was blocked by a firewall, and they had intentions to apply for the grant. Part of the grant is a 75-25 share. So at this time, I come before you with a new agreement between the Sheriff's Office and the police department and the city and county on the 75-25 share. The only thing that really changes, we get this grant awarded on an annual basis, is now this year, the Sheriff's Office will be managing the grant versus the police department. So I would request chair's signature on the grant.
And what is the purpose of the grant?
Typically, it's what we applied for it was to purchase more radios and ballistic helmets. So it's typically used for equipment needs.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Sheriff Schneider? Does anybody want to on the grant award?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to approve the Justice Assistance Grant.
And is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any questions? If There are no questions, assuming a roll call vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion is passed.
Thank you.
And Sheriff Schneider, please note that I think it's wonderful. It happens when firewalls sometimes block important information that comes through. So I think it was very nice on behalf of the Sheriff's Department to still work with the Police Department, the City of Grand Forks, and that you could share the award. So thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Ms. Nelson, do you have a copy or would you need one?
I believe it's electronically signed, is it not?
Okay. All right, if not, I do have a copy.
Okay.
The second item that I bring before you is a mutual aid agreement between law enforcement, specifically the Grand Forks County Sheriff's Office and the Grand Forks Police Department. Upon conversation with Lieutenant Derek Zimmel, he noticed that this mutual aid agreement had not been updated for approximately 5 or 6 years. And minor changes were made in some of the language, including use of mobile radios, what channels, who decides what channel we talk on. And it was primarily for updating signatures. This has been previously signed by the City of Grand Forks, including the chief, the mayor, and the financial director. If the county commission approves, I would request signature of Ms. Nelson and
And would that be signature for current date or would that go back dates as well?
that would be just for today, starting this date.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Sheriff Schneider on this mutual aid agreement? If not, would anyone like to open a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a motion to approve by Commissioner Falk. Does anybody want to second that motion?
Second, Dave.
Okay, it's been seconded by Sheriff Rost, Commissioner Rost. Any discussion on the motion? If there is no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lastly, what I have for you today is, if you recall, last fall, the county worked with the state on a Northeast Regional Coordinator for the Vision Zero project. We were able to go through an interview process, and as I told you in a past meeting, we did successfully hire an applicant, Caitlin Atkinson. Part of her duties is to meet commissions and councils in her area. And she's here today to introduce herself and give a little background on what she has. So, Ms. Atkinson.
Good afternoon, County Commissioner Grand Forks. I'm Caitlin Atkinson. I am from Grand Forks, born and raised, and I reside in Thompson with my husband.
You can go another room if you want.
What was that?
That's somebody on the
Not-
Zoom, not
yeah.
you.
Sorry.
No problem. So I was hired on and began my role on November 2nd. And so I've been spending an abundance of time and getting very familiar with not only Vision Zero initiatives that are already happening in the state, but it is happening across our country as well. So, I'm very excited to really get to dive into saving people on our roads. Our goal of this initiative is really to reduce the number of fatalities and serious injuries across our state and bring that number down to zero. It is a task, but we are up for the task. And I am the resource for the entire Northeast region of the state, which includes Grand Forks County. So if there are ever any needs that you all have or ideas or thoughts, I would be your point of contact. And I do have business cards if anyone does need them. Otherwise, I can be contacted through the Vision Zero website as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions as best I can that you may have.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions of Caitlin? If not, I'd like to welcome you to your new role. Did you have a question? They're too busy. Do you have a question? I'd like to welcome you to your new role. And one of the things I think that I've seen in the past few weeks, if not previous years, is not all of our fatalities are happening on the road. The fatalities are happening in towns, whether it's speeding, driving into embankments, whatever the situation may be. And so obviously there's going to have to be a lot of insightfulness looking at not only what's happening on the roads with different types of equipment, slow moving equipment, whatever the case may be, but also what's happening in our cities and towns, because we should not have people losing their lives at two intersections in downtown Grand Forks. It just shouldn't happen. So thank you very much for taking on this role, and we welcome you back and hope to hear good things from you in the future. So good luck at your new job.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. She definitely brings a lot of energy and passion and excitement. We're really looking forward to the work that she does. So with that, I have nothing further.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Shara. We appreciate it. All right, the next item on our agenda is looking at our juvenile justice facility. Do we have Bridgie available?
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Okay.
Bridgie.
Yay, I'm here. I am here. Had a little problems with my connections, but I'm on. I'm here today just because of the situation that's happened with Lutheran Social Services and their closing. It will affect the attendant care site for our detention center here in the city. And I've spoken with Tom about it, a couple times over the weekend. And we're just looking at ways to prepare, because as effective at the end of this month, that facility will not be in operation, as to my understanding right now. So I know it's a responsibility of the county, and attendant care takes the status offenders from the local law enforcement arrestees through the Northeast Judicial District, and it limits those coming into our detention center. And presently with COVID, we went from a 16-bed facility down to an 8-bed facility with quarantining, juveniles as they come in for a 14-day period. Presently, right now, if our facility would have to oversee and take on that responsibility, that would probably become effective January 30th. So in preparation, we've got some ideas, and we're looking ahead to find some additional funding through the county that will support this need.
Okay, Commissioner Falk, did you want to add anything to the comments that Bridgie has made?
Yes. Clearly what we're going to have to do is remodel the area right below juvenile detention and make that the attendant care facility, and use part-time staff from juvenile detention to take care of that. And actually, we looked at that about, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, as a possibility in doing away with using Lutheran Social Services. However, at that time, we decided it wasn't in our best interest, if we were going to be building a building, to remodel that and then knock it down 3 or 4 years later. There would be a waste of resources. Now we're up against the wall, and that's really our only available option. So, and I think we're going to have to move at breakneck speed, so to speak. The state will probably give us some leeway for 60 days, maybe. Bridgie would know more, but we're going to have some facility there. So my suggestion is that Bridgie meet with Bill and come up with an itemized list of everything that has to be done, so that any contractor would have to give us an idea, or they'd have a detailed plan of what needs to be done, so we don't run into a bunch of change orders down the road or add-ons. I think it's a simple process: a door, a bathroom facility, sheetrock, paint, and flooring. But I don't see any way that we have time to advertise and open this up for bids. That just isn't going to work. And the project probably is going to run $30,000 to $50,000. I'd like to think or hope it's 30, but it may run up to 50. We'll have to find heat and air conditioning in that area. But I think what we should do is at least solicit a couple of bids just from contractors who are available to do it immediately, not, July or August or whenever, but they have to be able to do it immediately. And if we have to have a special meeting, or we could meet on it in 2 weeks and hopefully get started on this, but we have to move as quickly as possible. Thank you, that's all.
I do have a question of Ms. Wamstead. When we're looking at, obviously Lutheran Social Services, I believe is going to be done with providing service by the 1st of February. And we do have some attendant care issues that need to be dealt with. When we're looking at some type of reconstruction or updating at 30 to 50,000, is there a way to minimize some of the bid processing that we have to go through because of such emergency? Or what would what do we need to do to move forward on this?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, based on the cost estimate, I don't think there would be a requirement that this be publicly bid. Probably, as Commissioner Falk suggests, to get kind of a sampling of bids from a few different contractors would suffice for the statute. However, I can work with Ms. Hanson to make sure that we're following all legal requirements.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Nelson, when we're looking at a dollar amount such as this, 30,000 to 50,000, would we be looking at our building improvement fund, or would we be looking at cash carry forward to cover this expenditure?
Madam
Matt,
Chair,
Madam
members of
Chair.
the commission, I think you should use the capital improvements budget.
Okay.
There are funds in that 2021 budget. And if we run into something down the line, we can always amend that budget.
Okay. Commissioner Ford, I believe you had a comment to say, or Commissioner Falk, sorry.
No, I was going to emphasize the same facts that Debbie Nelson just brought forward. And, and hopefully some of the money all of the money that we paid into Lutheran Social Services for our contract next year will come back to us. However, I don't know that we can count on that money for construction. I think that money will have to be used to amend Ms. Hanson's budget, because she's going to have to hire part-time people to take care of attendant care every time that comes in. But, when we talked about it a couple of years ago, we actually thought this might be able to save us a few dollars every year. So I'm optimistic.
This will streamline intakes as well. All juveniles will then come to the detention center to go through the intake screening process, which will determine whether a juvenile remains in the status care area of the attendant care site room, or, would go upstairs into detention. So it's going to be it'll be easier for, the arresting agencies to come to one spot. And I think, we've got some ideas, and we're hopeful that this will be an easy transition, although it's still a sad one too, for all the social service people who have been contributing to, helping and working their passion. So we'll look at those employees too, maybe down the road, but just hoping to find a facility first, an area that we can, get into and accomplish this area to, be able to take on the intakes. And Bill is working on it right now too. I just had him, I talked to him this afternoon, and he's going to check out the units, the old sentenced area that's below us that was used to house the pre-sentence 18 adult prisoners, but it's our left access and our main floor entrance into the facility. So we've got some hurdles to get through, but I think we can accomplish it.
Okay, do any other commissioners have any questions of Bridgie or Tom? If not, would someone care to make a motion to get this process started?
This is Tom. I'll make a motion that we commence drafting plans to remodel an area in the near the juvenile detention center in the old correctional center for the purposes of turning it into an attendant care facility, and that plans be drawn up as quickly as possible, and that we attempt to get at least a couple of bids from local contractors with the idea that the work has to be commenced immediately. Thank you.
Did you want to put in anything into your motion about spending no more than 50,000 or something like that, so we have something coming out of the capital improvements fund?
Well, I think this is going to have to come back to us with the plan and the amount, even if we have to maybe have a special meeting, but I think we need to find out what it's going to cost. We're kind of just throwing those numbers up in the air. And I'm fine with including in the motion to proceed if it costs less than 50,000. If it exceeds 50,000, then maybe we need to talk about it.
Okay. You've heard the motion. Does anybody want to second that motion?
Madam Chair, I would second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? If there's no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. And then you can just let me know, Commissioner Falk, if we need to be in touch with Debbie and if we need to hold an additional meeting at that time. The only other comment I want to make on behalf of the commission is the news that came out rather quickly this last week about the loss of Lutheran Social Services is very unfortunate. Within our state, we do not have a great deal of human service agencies, one at every corner, whether it be our larger communities or our smaller communities. And they had been there for 100 plus years. Hopefully, we don't continue to see this downfall of one agency start filtering into our human service agencies. We're small and we don't have enough staff right now in the human service world to deal with all of the problems that people have. And so I'm very discouraged to hear that they're closing. Also very discouraged when, if it was a funding issue, we have a very, very large savings account at the state level that sits there. And that sits there that maybe the 24,000 some people that got services from LSS, the 300 and some people that work for LSS, maybe that should have been a consideration in moving forward. It just very disheartening. And so hopefully those individuals can find jobs. Hopefully those individuals that need services can find support services. I know when it was covered by the media last night, many times on the media, they reported that this may be the first time that employees and or clients of that particular agency were hearing this. So that's very unfortunate because they've done an extremely good job in the past over 100 years, even providing services. So that's unfortunate. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. All right, our next item on the agenda is the Renaissance Zone Program.
Madam Chair, I'm Todd Jones, Grand Forks City Administrator. I'm also joined by Mayor Wojcinski and City Council President Sandy, so I'm pleased with that too. So welcome from the City of Grand Forks. It's always great to be here. The only person I really miss is Carrie Malm, so here's to Carrie Malm. I always appreciate it. We have a two-part ask for you. If I could go through the Renaissance Zone first, put a period and ask for that request first. And so Debbie, it should be the start of that presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. We have it all combined into one presentation.
Okay.
I'm going to first start.
May I just ask that you speak up? It's hard to hear. Please.
Okay, I'm going to first talk about the Renaissance Zone. So if you can, next slide, Debbie. Thank you. And so the Renaissance Zone, what we're asking this evening is for Madam Chair to be able to sign a letter of support. So the Renaissance Zone is a state-local partnership. So the state-local partnership regarding a 5-year state income tax abatement, and it's a 5-year property tax abatement. And this was put in place in the late 1990s. So it's been in 20 plus years. They do require this program to be updated and approved every 5 years. And then also as part of that approval, The request is for the city of Grand Forks to receive support letters from our other local government partners to improve the county commission. So that's why I'm here this evening. Next slide. Okay. One thing you should really note is Grand Forks had a flood in 1997. This program came into being in 1999. So we've used this program much less than other communities. If you look at Bismarck and Fargo, just because we got a lot of flood recovery dollars. And so we rebuilt a lot of the downtown area after the flood using CDBG funds and others. So I think this program is going to be really vitally important as we move forward into the next 20 years when we won't have those other incentives. But you can see even with that, we've had 57 total projects, and we've raised the value of our community from 4.6 million to almost 21 million. Currently, we have 2 projects that are under construction right now. One is Harry Steakhouse downtown. So thank you, Hal Gershman, regarding moving that forward, project forward. And the mayor and I just got a visit with Hal to show off things moving forward. So he's open up this spring. So I think it's going to be really exciting. It's going to bring New York City to Grand Forks, North Dakota. So that's going to be pretty darn exciting. The other one is the Argyle structure, and that's just down Demers Avenue, and that's otherwise known as the GLG office building with some apartments. So those are the 2 that are currently under construction at this point in time. Next slide, Deb. Proposed changes, and I'll show you a map after that. One of the things we've really this program is to revitalize your community. It really started out in the downtown area, and as this program has moved forward over the last 20 years, they have allowed an island where we could pick an island outside of downtown. That's in and around the Grand Cities Mall area. That was the island that we picked previously. They've expanded the number of blocks that we can go into as we move forward. So it's adapted a little bit. So really, we're centered in the downtown with the Grand Cities Mall area. The one thing I'm going to show you here is that we've also changed. We've extended our downtown footprint to Gateway Drive. And one thing we've heard throughout the community, it's great that downtown's doing well, but we've got to try to extend development as much as possible. So we've extended, when you take a look at this map,
Marketing.
Hopefully start improving that area too. We did have to link it with the downtown area, so as we move forward. So I think it's a big one. You'll see on this map, there are some blocks that have been taken off because they've been redeveloped, and we've added some blocks in that need development as we move forward. So next slide, Deb. And so as I spoke of in the blue, that's that Gateway Drive area that's connected to our downtown, trying to move forward with further development on our north side. And you can see some X's, specifically in the downtown where we have really redeveloped our area. And you can see in the downtown area, we have added the water treatment plant site. We intend to revitalize that site on their new mixed-use development coming up. So the one thing also, not only Gateway Drive, but previously we've also extended our Renaissance Zone down the Gateway Corridor, and that was to try to really extend our downtown and have a better connection with the University of North Dakota. So that was the other big part. Even in the Midtown area, which is kind of off to my left of the screen, I guess, but we've taken some blocks off and added some blocks in there where we think things are going pretty well, so we can adapt as we move forward. So with that, what we're asking for is that you would support the plan update, some of the changes that we've made here, and we would, we're going to move forward with final approval at the city council, but as part of that, we are asking for your support and approval. And there is a letter that we have drafted for your review and hopefully signature and bring back to the city. We'd include that letter as part of our final approval.
Okay, are there any questions of commissioners for Mr. Phelan? If there are no questions, would someone like to entertain a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Dave. I move that we approve the request for the chair to sign the letter that they have included in their packet.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second to
Second
Tom.
that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Falk has seconded that motion. Any discussion? If there is no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. And good luck in moving things along, not only in Gateway Drive, which is very necessary, but as well as out in the Grand Cities Mall area. it will be nice to see some new things happening in both of those areas. And we certainly will want to partner in that, in those Renaissance zones to make sure that we can improve the access and the services that are available in our city.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Mr. Phelan, do you have a copy of that letter you would like the chair to sign?
Yes, we'll send it over.
All right, thank you.
And did you,
I think
And then I have the
Yes.
next one's probably in a bigger ask in a partnership. So the next program, I go to the next slide. Again, I'm going to talk about tax increment financing. And again, I want to kind of look back to the past. So the Renaissance Zone is a state-local partnership. So the programs I'm going to talk about now with incentives are another state-local partnership in regarding incentives in the built area. And so we haven't done a lot of these projects. So I'm going to call it modern history, we've done about 8 projects that are considered tax increment financing. When I talk about TIF, I'm going to talk about tax increment financing tax exemption. I'm going to talk about tax increment financing revenue bonds, and I'm going to talk about payment in lieu of taxes this year. So those are all, I'm going to call state incentives that we can apply locally. And in these 4 projects I'm going to go over, there's a mix of all those things to try to get some of these projects over the finish line. But you can even see 8 projects. I just want to highlight 2 that we have partnered on. The University Flats, that's the large apartment that was called where the Grossman block used to be, that kind of revitalized that area with an apartment. Craig Tweet and Kevin Ritterman redeveloped that. That was a tax increment financing exemption. The other project you helped us with a lot is with Pure Development, and that's the Eagles mixed use development. That was another tax increment financing project as we move forward. Next slide. Thank you. I want to thank Commissioner Engen and Falk. And back in 2017, the state law changed, and Debbie, you'll know this, is that there was a bad example in the city of Bismarck where local governments weren't working together on these incentive projects. And so really what the state legislature required is that any incentive greater than 5 years, we needed concurrence from both the county commission and the Grand Forks School Board. So we've been at this Grand Forks School Board. They do things a little bit different. They do a 2-step process. You go there and have a discussion, and then at their next meeting, they make a decision. So we intend to be there on next week, Monday, for a final approval. We think we're going to get that as we move forward. But with this process, Mr. Engen and Mr. Falk, we created this local government advisory committee, and that was for all the taxing entities to have representation and hear the projects up front as we move forward. And so we did have a meeting. There was a general consensus to move the projects forward for further review, and that's why we're here this evening. Further, what we did is that we incorporated a third-party financial review. And so one of the really demands is let's make sure the project meets the incentive. And so that's called the but-for test. But for the incentive, the project may or may not move forward. In all these projects, what we're saying, but for this incentive, the project would not move forward as we move forward. We use Baker Tilly, formerly known as, is our third-party financial advisor. They're formerly known as Springstead, and so they got bought up by a larger organization with more horsepower. On the virtual meeting, Michaela Hewitt, who's our director, if there's any financial questions, she would be able to respond to any of those particular questions. But just that's background, that's why we are here, and those were the recommendations to move forward in this particular case. I'm going to talk about 4 projects. All of these projects meet. There's a public purpose. There has to be a public purpose for why we would improve these investments, these partnered investments. They are private investments. They are going to grow our tax base. They are going to improve land that's not as developed as it should be. It's going to grow workforce. It's going to really grow our community. So all of these projects really meet that definition as we move forward. And 3 of the projects are set in the downtown area. All 3 of those projects also meet our downtown action priorities. And the project on the university campus, that meets their strategic priority too as we move forward. So they meet all the policy priorities as we move forward. They meet the state law. And now it's whether we think it's the incentive is the appropriate measure at this point. So with that, I'll talk about the Beacon project, Beacon by Epic first. Epic Development Company is online. So if you have any particular questions, we can call on them to answer any particular questions. So I'll go to the next slide, Debbie, and then the slide after that. So this particular project, this is at the townhouse project, and this project if you look at this project pre-pandemic, it was probably looking at 2 to 3 apartment buildings. Craig Tweeten, Kevin Ritterman owned the property, and along the way, Epic Development out of West Fargo was engaged as part of this project, and this project has gotten much larger. It's gone probably from a $15 million project to a $50 million project, and I think all for the better. This project, we try to drive in all 4 of these projects as much value as we can for the long-term valuation of our city and county. This project is highlighted by 3 7-story buildings that will be a mix of commercial, rental, apartments, and also condos. Inside of this particular project will be a 40,000 square foot, it's called Town Square. And if you look at our downtown action plan, one of the thoughts we really had is how do we redevelop the town square that we have? And one of the really demands is how do we make it bigger? How do we make it more diverse? How do we have more activities in there? And it's really a square is a square, and it's hard to make it different. This project came along, and this was thought as this could be, all that enlarged entertainment complex, and we could do more things. And as part of this project, that's why this is integrated into this particular project. That 40,000 square foot plaza would be publicly owned. And probably in this case would be the city of Grand Forks, but we'd want to partner with you on programming and how we develop that for the greater good of our downtown and greater community. So there'd be lots of engagement of how that gets developed as we move forward. You can see where it has a stage. It has for concerts, whether it's for plays. Hopefully we'll have a play area. It'll have a water feature. It'll have all the things that people really got excited about when we looked at that downtown connection. I think the big, how are we going to pay for this is unique, and in a sense, we're asking for a TIF bond, and Debbie Nelson will know this. So the city, as part of this project, will sell a TIF bond. And so we haven't done a lot of these over our history, but we're proposing to do a TIF bond to make this development 80% tax exempt. And that 80% tax exemption would go toward paying for that TIF bond, that increment. We think right now that TIF bond will be valued with that increment, could support around a $6 to $7 million public investment in this. And so right now, if you look at the staff report, it talks about a 7 to 9. We'll have to do some programming, what kind of features we want in there. I think we'll have to do some refinement on that, but just so you know that. The important part of this project, not only will that TIF bond and that increment pay for something that the public will really be able to use and see, hopefully as many days of the year as possible, from ice skating rinks to concerts in the summer. The second thing, that 20% increment will go back to local government. And so the developer really wanted to make sure not only was the TIF bond going towards something in the public, that the 20% would be delivered so that the local government would receive something up front on that particular project. Later, I'll kind of say what this all means on this. Again, it would be we're saying right now is likely a 15 to 25 year TIF bond, depending on what the value and how much we need to sell the bond for. So that's yet to come. It would become part of a developer agreement on all these projects, but we have to work out as a city of Grand Forks some of the details of the development agreement. Next slide. Memorial Village is a really important project, and again, on this particular project, Steve Beering of Beering Associates is a part of this, and as well as there's many, I did notice several UND representatives. And so what we've done working with UND and Mike Pieper, who's their Associate VP of Facilities, I always give him a huge shout out. So when you see the campus of UND and all its renewal, we should thank Mike Pieper because he's done some great job in his position. We should do everything we can to keep him in where he's doing, because he's done some incredible things for the University of North Dakota in our great community. So thanks, Mike, on this. So next slide. What UND and we partnered as a city of Grand Forks on a couple, we'll call it public-public partnerships. The University Avenue reconstruction with the new streetscape. We partnered with the University of North Dakota on providing some cash grants to move that project forward. We've also invested in the Nistler College of Business and Public Administration for a Workforce Development Center. And UND is going to have to really go to public-private partnerships and public-public partnerships to get projects done. And this is another case and example of trying to meet their three goals. They have UND one strategic plan goal of increasing enrollment, being a more competitive university. I think this project meets that. Number two, to upgrade their housing. And this project is going to upgrade their housing. They're going to narrow down some of their housing that they currently have on campus. They probably have too much, but as they narrow it down, they're going to try to make it better and more competitive for students who want to be there. Finally, to increase the competitiveness of their athletic programs. And this really is hitting at the heart of trying to make their projects more competitive. This particular project, the first floor will be what they're calling the clean area of UND athletics. So their athletic offices will be located on the first floor of this 5-story building. It will be interlinked with the High Performance Center by a walkway, which will be quite neat and exciting, as you see. This project, by locating athletic offices, it will reduce the requests they're going to need for high performance too. And they're going to need to fundraise this. So this incorporates a large portion of that HPC 2 into this development under a public-private partnership. What we're requesting in this is what we're requesting under this case is a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. And so it would be a payment in lieu of tax exemption for 20 years, and we would exempt 90% of the value of this particular project. So we would receive 10% as local governments in return. And obviously right now this property is under UND's hands, and so it's not taxable. So 10% is another increment for all of us as local government entities. Next slide. And then one more slide. This is the Lions Auto project. This is a large project, and we're going to call this Lions Auto, but it consists of the whole block. And so it's that entire block. In addition to this project, they'll need to work with, as a developer, with the city of Grand Forks, because we do own the Grand Forks Herald lot, and so we'll have to work out some arrangements there. There are also some improvements that will be needed in that alleyway too. The project sponsor and developer in this case is John Savage from Northwood Construction, and I think he's online to the specific question. This project, what we've tried to do is working with the developer is drive as much value to this project as possible. And you can see it's a $27 million project with an estimated value on completion for taxable value at $18 million. This particular project, you can see, is what we're trying to do as part of our downtown action plan is drive as much value to this project and to drive as some commercial. And so as we've looked at the Grand Forks Herald, we anticipate receiving an EDA grant where we'll be able to turn that building into a tech accelerator as kind of our hub of our downtown high-tech center. And as part of growing tech in Grand Forks, and Keith Lund is on here, I know the EDC board is, he probably wants to say a few words, he's supporting all these projects, but we're trying to move our tech jobs in our community as much as possible. Right now we're at 30 to 40% of where we should be to the midpoint. And our friends to the South Fargo are probably between 100 and 120% to the midpoint. So we've got some work to do, but we've got some really great opportunities with UAS data and analytics, and really Herald's the hub, try to grow it, feed off of Grand Sky development and how we really build on our hub. What is this project? The reason why this is a more expensive project, it has commercial space. And so when you add large commercial space, whether it's retail, whether it's restaurants, or whether it's just commercial space, there's risk that goes into that in the rentability of this. So the reason for that, and I talked to Paul Hodak, our city assessor, he says, if we didn't provide this incentive, this would generally just be an apartment building that we've seen before. So we're trying to drive as much value, not only for value from property tax perspective, but also from a workforce and diversity of our economy perspective, because we see firms locating downtown in this commercial space in our downtown hub area. And so in this particular case, we are requesting a 20-year 100% tax exemption as a pilot in this particular case. The final project, Debbie, is the Block 5, and otherwise known as what we know as St. John's Block building. And this is a project that is, the developer is Mike Kuntz from Icon. And this project has, and this building has deteriorated over the years. So I've been here 20 plus years, and as years go by, this project has continued to decline. One of the largest and challenging parts of this project is it's a historic building. It has several ADA issues, so there's lots of upgrades that need in this building, and that's why the building has stayed the same, because it requires a large incentive. to move this project forward. So this is to really bring this building back to life, not adding anything, but just recreating its grandeur of old in a real strategic corner in a strategic historic building moving forward. What we're proposing as part of this development, so we were first looking at a TIF bond on this. The gap in financing to move this project forward is $900,000. And so we really didn't want to sell a $900,000 bond because these bonds are expensive with overhead and everything else. So what we're proposing is there was a twofold thing. We didn't really want to sell a TIF bond for $900,000. Number two, we wanted to try to deliver as much upfront tax incentive to local government as possible. So by financing that $900,000 through the Grand Forks Growth Fund at a better interest rate with better terms, we can deliver under this project 10% upfront from the incremental value that we couldn't do with a TIF bond. And so this project again is looking at returning 10% of the incremental value back to the taxpayers of Grand Forks. Next slide, Deb. So what's the overall impact? And I have Mayor Buczynski, and one thing he's run on, let's be more aggressive. And our council president, I think our city council agrees, let's be more aggressive, especially coming out of this pandemic and trying to redevelop this community so that we have lots to look at 20 years from now. So you can see overall right now, if we don't do anything, the 75,000 is what that value of that property is today. By accepting that increment on all these particular buildings, the year one value will be returning to the taxpayers is 224,000. If you look at year 21, if we don't do anything, we're conservative here. We just assume the value would stay the same. Likely, if we don't do anything, it'll probably decline. But that year 21 value would be, instead of 75,000, almost 1.3 million. And then even if you look at years 1 through 20, everything stayed the same. We would collect 1.5 as all taxing entities, but with that increased value, we'd be at 4.4 million. And then really the big jump is years 21 through 30. And you can see where if we take the years 1 through 30, including that last 10 years, we're up to 17 million in taxable value. And the next slide shows where Grand Forks County shares. And right now, Grand Forks County is 24% of the local government tax bill. And so what we did is in a similar vein, kind of just break it down to what that means to Grand Forks County as your 24% of the taxing part for Grand Forks. The final slide is what we're asking for. One thing I talked about the Gateway Drive and the Renaissance Zone. What we're trying to do is we have some declining properties, and then we get together with Tom and Debbie every year. Everyone says, "What's the city's value of mill going to be?" And generally, it's been very incremental the last 3 years. It's been about 2%. And even though we're growing, we have some significant declines in property that are embedded in that growth. And so this is just one property, otherwise formerly known as the Holiday Inn. Its 10I value was 5.1 million. It's valued at 1.6, and you can see where that tax value has declined within that. The next project is the next property is the Columbia Mall, and you can see this is the real significant one. The 10-year high was almost 31 million. It's right now valued at 11.3 million. It's probably going down from there. And these are two project areas that I think are going to need similar incentives that I'm talking about now. And I know if people say, why don't we develop throughout the whole city? I suspect these two properties and the developers are going to be at our doorstep asking for incentives to help redevelop and rejuvenate their particular properties. The final slide, I think, is what the request is in front of you this evening. We are asking for support for Beacon by Epic via an 8% TIF bond, up to 25-year revenue bond for that public plaza improvement. The Memorial Village, we're asking for a 90% pilot exemption to move that project forward over a 20-year period of time. The Lions project, we were asking for a 100% pilot exemption over 20 years. And then finally, we're for Blockview or St. John's, we're asking for a 90% pilot exemption for a 15 to 20-year Grand Forks Growth Fund loan. So that's our request in front of you. We are asking for your concurrence, and this will be final approved at the Grand Forks City Council on February 1st after a public hearing.
Okay.
And I do have Mayor Buczynski here and Dina Sandy that our council member would like to say a few words.
Sure.
Well, Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm Brandon Bochensky, the mayor of the fine city of Grand Forks. I won't take too long because I think the real start of the show is the developers that are willing to put $116 million worth of development into our community in the midst of a pandemic, which is pretty incredible and not happening many places across the country. I'm going to talk about probably just two of the broader benefits. One is the benefit to the community, and the second is the benefit to the taxing entities, which in the end is a benefit to the community too, through better services or lower taxes. Well, first of all, let's look at $116 million worth of construction and other ancillary jobs that will be created in this community at a time when a lot of people are out of work, and the number of people that can be brought into the community to do that work and hopefully stick around will be a real asset to the community. And just look at the positive impact of the vitality and the landscape of the city and the county of Grand Forks, seeing these projects go through. And then if you look at the taxing entities ourselves, sometimes we've got to plant seeds so that we can harvest that fruit into the future. It would really be nice if 20 years ago we had a bunch of these projects that happened and they'd be coming out now. We'd really be thanking the people that were in our spot 20 years ago. So now all we can do is do that for them. And in this case, we've got a real opportunity to incrementally add in year one, but to really get that big benefit starting in year 20. And to add to some of these projects that have really declined, if you look at another project that's really been a tough one on the city or in the county, on the property values, is the Travel Lodge in South Washington. That's a project that was worth millions of dollars, has slowly been declining, and it got to the point where a nonprofit actually bought it. So now the value is zero. So we have zero tax revenue from that. And if we allow these projects or these buildings to continue to depreciate like that, we get these blighted areas in the community, and we continue to lose on our tax rolls rather than gaining. So really like to see everybody's support here today. It's a look into the future, and I think it's going to be a bright future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Dana Sandy, Grand Forks City Council President. Madam Chairwoman Peach, very nice to see you again, as always, as well as all of the rest of the commissioners. I'm disappointed Ms. Knopf is not here so I could hug her in person, but hopefully I will get to next time I see her in person. And I'd really like to thank Mr. Engen and Mr. Falk for coming to our meeting at City Council Chambers and representing the county so well. I don't have much to add beyond what Mr. Phelan and the mayor have said, other than I like to point out that there are a few times in your lifetime when you get to making a difference in your community. And I believe this is one of those opportunities where we all get to share in a generational opportunity to actually affect and change our community. Quite frankly, putting $115 million into investments in our community, we should all be begging companies to do this, especially knowing on the back end that, for example, Mr. Miscavige is planning on investing $27 million when on the back end, his property is only going to be worth 18 when he's done. Nobody in their right mind would do that, but he wants to make that investment because he loves Grand Forks and he believes in our future. And I, for one, believe in him and know that when organizations like Epic, Ritterman's, Mr. Berry, and even UND, when they're willing to stick their neck out like this, you can follow their track record. The people that are willing to make these investments have a proven track record in Grand Forks and in the state and nationally. And we're very fortunate to have them here in our community, giving us this opportunity to make a generational change. So I think it's important to point out that the City Council in Grand Forks has been vetting these projects for a few months now, not only having the discussions in the council chambers, having the discussions amongst council members, as well as with the developers and our third party financial analysis review. And the city council gave unanimous approval, initial approval to move these projects forward because we think they're important for our community. And so I would just like to ask you to see that, understand it, and I hope that you agree that these are worthy of these incentives and will make a big difference in our community. So I would ask you personally to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the commission if they have any questions of the three gentlemen that have just spoken to us.
This is Tom Falk. I've got just a general question. They may not have the answer today, but we've talked about the tax issues, but on the Beacon property, one of those buildings is going to be a condominium building. I think the last one to be built. Now, once those condominiums are sold, they would pay taxes. Would that change the tax outlook, or is that factored into these numbers that we're getting today?
Commissioner Falk, this is Todd Gillen. That is figured in. So when we took a look at this, we looked at all the different uses from commercial to rental apartments to condominiums. And I know the developer, Epic, did do a study regarding condos and market demand, and there is some market demand for condos and in the downtown. If you have any specific questions, I think there are representatives of Epic, and I know Michaela Hewitt from Baker Tilly is also on there. If you have a specific question, I'm sure they'd be able to respond.
No, that's fine. I guess I have only one other comment from our meeting for the rest of the commissioners. When we attended the meeting, the city actually employs a private company out of Chicago, I believe, and their representative was there, and they review all the facts and numbers to make certain that the tax exemptions requested are actually needed. And so that independence, I think, supports these projects, and I think they're great projects for Grand Forks to go forward. Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions from the commission?
Madam Chair, this is Dave. Can you hear me?
Yes, please
Oh,
go
okay.
ahead.
All right. I think this is my third time through all of these details on these projects. And I think there's some chance that some of us won't be on the commission in 20 years when the money starts coming in, but we can probably do a very good thing for the future of the city and the commission and everybody, and for everybody. And I'm strongly in favor of approval as they presented it. I think they've really thought it through. Good thing for downtown.
Anybody else? I guess I have a couple of questions. Obviously, when you're looking at these 4 different projects, how many are involving housing? Beyond, well, condominiums and apartment housing, I would assume. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, they're all related to housing. If you look at the Block 5, that's redeveloping existing housing. The townhouse or the Beacon project is housing, as we said, rental and home ownership. And then the Memorial Village will have student housing as part of that particular development. And the Lions also will have rental units in that development.
And so in that housing, there will need to be a certain number of low-income housing to meet the housing standards. Isn't that correct?
On all 4 of these projects, they're all going to be market rent housing units.
Okay.
And so if you recall, the Pure Development project that was done by Move Forward by Kevin Ritterman and Craig Tweeden, they did receive state grant funding to put in low-income housing rental units. And as I recall, I think there's 81 units in Pure Development, half of which are low and moderate incomes. But they did that through a state grant. I think we should press our state legislature to continue to do those kinds of programs so that we can incorporate more affordable housing into these units. But there are no funds currently from the state to do this. And so these are all market rent units.
But hopefully something could change in the future with our legislative session that they could add something like that for low-income housing.
And I think Mr. Ritterman has always been an advocate. And if you look at the projects he's done with Craig downtown, they've always tried to incorporate a low and moderate income housing. They weren't able to under this case.
And the other question I have is based on the state demographer, we have a lot of units in our city as well. And I understand that, you know, as some get older, they may become dilapidated and not fixed up. But looking at numbers of population, does the state demographer's facts support more housing needs in the city of Grand Forks and Grand Forks County at this time?
Maybe, and I know all developers have done their due diligence and of course they're bank financing and their investors. And so I think the answer is yes. I'm not going to say housing yes throughout the community, but I think in these strategic areas, the answer is yes. And I mentioned UND. I think UND is narrowing down their housing options. So I would call Mike Peterson. He briefed that if I have 4,000 units, they're probably going to narrow down to 2,000 units, but those 2,000 units are going to be better units. So I think there will be some subtraction, but the housing units will be better as part of this.
Well, and obviously the way many of those dorms were built were to be 2 people in one dorm room, and I think they're trying to make them singles. So they're a little bit more user friendly, but they're not at a large space particularly at this time. What are the wishes of the commission?
Madam Chair, I will move approval of the requests for all 4 projects.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Madam Chair, I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If there is no discussion, we'll move on with the vote. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming to us and presenting this. I think working together is the smartest thing that we can do in our community, and hopefully we can continue to do that and go down that same road. So thank you all very much for your attendance. Take care and have a good evening. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the tax increment financing project.
That was it.
That was it, sorry. Okay, public health, Ms. Swanson. Are you available?
Madam Chair, I am here. Would you like me to make a few remarks, and then I'm going to pass the baton to Tom Ford?
Yes, please, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the commission. You have before you, that was sent out late this afternoon, an update from Michael Dulitz and Nerese Nicolette. They are our data coordinators for Grand Forks Public Health Department, among other things that they do. And they have provided a nice snapshot of some data along with some strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that we have in terms of COVID. We are starting to see our numbers level off at a really nice low level, and our dashboard may even be able to reach a green level fairly soon. We are in the process of rolling out vaccines, and we're really excited about our partnerships that we've developed, including a partnership with Altru Health System to do some combined clinics at the Alaris Center. We'll be having 2 this week, one on Wednesday and one on Saturday. As you know, thank you. There's the dashboard for the vaccinations, and it's live. You can click on it and you can go to the county and see the number of doses that have actually been administered. So we're doing well in Grand Forks County. You may notice in the information there that it appears that our percent of the population is a little bit lower than some of the other metro areas. But it's very likely related to the fact that we have a younger age population in Grand Forks County due to our university and some other factors. So other areas also have a higher percentage of people in long-term care and some tertiary health organizations that employ a lot of people. So their numbers may be a little bit higher in their percent of population. But I expect as we continue our partnerships that these numbers will increase. And they will increase not incrementally likely, but by jumps because of our community clinics that we're holding where we host a number of people at one time. So I'm happy to answer any questions on vaccines, vaccine rollout, and then I will also turn it over to Mr. Ford or Ms. Lomstead to talk a little bit about the health officer's order that was issued over the weekend.
Okay, so Mr. Ford, are you talking about that?
I sure can, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thanks, Ms. Swanson. I'm pleased to say that there was a meeting that took place last Friday. Commissioner Falk and Mayor Wojcinski, myself, Mr. Phelan, Ms. Longstead, Ms. Swanson, and Dr. Walls all attended that meeting. And it was really in response to the governor allowing the statewide mask covering orders to expire. And it was the consensus of the group that met on Friday that we should continue on with something in Grand Forks County. Dr. Walls was wanting to continue that, and the purpose of the meeting was just to make sure the county and the city would support that, which that was the consensus. So really what the result of that meeting was how well the two entities can work together and how quickly we can come together and find consensus. So all the notices were sent out, as you know, because you saw the reports in the media. I can say that Dr. Walls wants to continue the mask covering order until further notice, until we start to see more vaccine rollout, more vaccine dissemination, and what the numbers do. As Commissioner Falk put it on Friday, I'm sure that group will be meeting once again to discuss how things are going and what the next step is. I can say that I don't know about other commissioners, but I've received quite a few positive comments in support of the action. And there have been some negative, which is to be expected, but the majority have been positive. That's really my recap of that meeting. Ms. Wamstead, did I miss anything? Did you want to add anything? Commissioner Falk, you were there?
Mr. Ford, members of the commission, I think what Mr. Ford provided was an accurate summary of the status. I would just add for clarification on the legal end is that the local health officer's order is substantially the same as the state order. It was Dr. Waltz's intention to have the same requirements regarding face coverings as the state order so that there's kind of a seamless transition and no new rules that citizens or law enforcement need to learn with the transition from the state order to the local health officer's order.
Okay, anything else to report on an update, Debbie?
I have nothing else unless you have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, I think it's exciting that we still have a mask mandate. It was an easy transition, I would assume, for citizens in Grand Forks County and the city of Grand Forks. Hopefully we can keep the numbers down for those that are transmitting the disease or getting the disease, as well as keeping the number of deaths down. And obviously, with the vaccine being made more available, let's hope that as many citizens as possible are signing up, getting in line, doing what they need to do so that they can get the vaccine as soon as it's made available to us. So that's wonderful news. Well, thank you very much, all of you. Our next item on the agenda is Emergency Management Director. Kari, are you with us?
I am, ma'am. I don't have anything for the board tonight. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the Border Township Associative Group. Do we have someone to report on that?
I think Mr. Golan is going to take point on that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Derek Gowan. I represent Turtle River Township on the Border Township Associative Group, or BTAG. I'm joined today by James Bergman, Gary Babinski, and Craig Jones. We represent 7 townships in North Dakota and Minnesota and the city of Oslo, trying to alleviate flooding in our area. which you all know has been more and more frequent as we go. I live in Grand Forks, city of Grand Forks, by a farm near Oslo, and yeah, we're hit hard. I'll kind of pass it over to James for a quick presentation on what we're kind of asking for. We met with the Grand Forks County Water Board, and we're looking for a joint powers agreement between Grand Forks County Water, Walsh County Water, and Middle Snake Tamarack Watershed District in Minnesota. So we can start moving this project forward. We've completed a study, and we'll kind of go through our findings with you now. James, anything to add?
Would it be appropriate, we have an 8-minute video, would it be appropriate to show that at this time?
That would be fine if you're able to do that online, absolutely.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'll share the screen here and
I also emailed everybody a YouTube link to that video, if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Is it coming through here?
No, I think if, can you share your screen down at the bottom? It'll say share screen. If you click on that, it should let you share the video.
There we go. Is it coming now?
Now you're sharing, yep.
Going on here. Blow our dikes apart. You always have that wonder.
Well, it's scary. Yeah, I mean, you don't sleep a couple nights.
It just hurts all the way around.
We need to do something.
So in just over a year, we've had 3 major floods. That's a problem.
Maybe I could try to play it.
We could try it on our end.
Yeah, James, I'm just seeing a white screen.
Yeah, we can't see the picture.
One of the big things that we can do is lower the levels and the heights of the floods, minimize the damage of these floods, and try and cut down on the frequency of the floods that are coming. 52 years, there's a lot of floods.
I've got it on my desktop.
Constant. And there hasn't been one when the water is coming that you're not under stress.
If you want, gentlemen, if you want to, oh, there it is. Now we got
Perfect.
It. Check my home.
We've had just a lot of frustration. We don't know for sure if the roads are going to go over, if the railroad's going to be running, the complaints from the customers that we have to deal with, and trying to make everybody happy and trying to give them answers, and they're panicking because when the customer needs product, they will go elsewhere, and they have gone elsewhere. Since I was employed by the Walsh County Highway Department back in 1998, I've been through 16 flood events. A lot of money locally that's being spent, and that all equates to property tax dollars, because there's just no way that you can continue to come up with this amount of money every single year, or 3 times in a year.
After going through several floods here through the 70s and 80s, in 97, the big flood, when Grand Forks got flooded, and they had a huge rebuild. One of the things they did was they opened up the Kennedy Bridge complex wider, so that more water could flow through there. North of us up at Drayton, a brand new bridge went in up there, way longer than the old bridge. Both those locations, the entire Red River goes through those bridges without flooding the highways around them, allowing traffic to go through without any interruption. Large in Grand Forks, small in Oslo, small at 317, back at large and great. The bridge in Oslo can handle about 45,000 cubic feet per second. Like a flood in 2020, this last year, the Red River was conveying about 70 to 80,000 cubic feet per second. That differential, that can fill up a section of land 1 mile square, 1 foot deep in 13.3 minutes. We have had several people in the past we've had to go out and rescue. One that sticks out in my mind was a vehicle that was in the water that we could not get to. That guy sat out on top of his car for 12 hours by the time we were able to get out there. It was under 30 degrees, but all the guy had on his t-shirt. National Guard has been great for us. They've helped us out, but it'd be sure nice not to have the National Guard come in every single year. It is a small town, but it's a very important town. It's a very important highway to come through. It's, North Dakota's right on the other side of us. There's a lot of traffic that comes through here.
The airboard will go on the ice and it'll go in the water and goes on anything. So we're the only thing in the area that can go around. Luckily, we're putting our lives at risk every single year during the flood.
The railroad bridge was built in 1905. And man, that's over 100 years old. The numbers I see, 17% of North Dakota's wheat moves through that rail line, which is actually 3% of all the wheat grown in the United States. And that has to shut down. That affects the prices for everyone.
The railroad bridge, built to 1905 constraints of steam traffic, has a huge pier right in the center so that that bridge can turn. It never happened in practice. Our solution comes in 3 phases. And so phase number 1 is to address the bridges, both the 317 North and the Oslo bridges. The 317 complex on both the North Dakota and the Minnesota side have provided an on-land span to allow water to go through on the approaches, along with reducing the elevation of the approach to the bridge to a level where on really high floods, it will be an escape route. In the Oslo area, with the Red Bridge and the Murray Bridge, the 2 bridges would be replaced with bridges at the same time, greatly reducing cost, with similar structure underneath, similar engineering thought patterns, similar flow methods. Phase 2, a mile east of the interstate to the Shane Road, we'd raise that road to protect the interstate, and we'd raise the road going south of Oslo for protection of Highway 1. Phase 3 then would remove the rest of the minor restrictions along the river. There's several abandoned yards along the river where the driveways are still located there. It would allow our water to flow through the area here.
I think if you sat down and looked at the numbers, it would make sense to make these improvements so that you could alleviate some of the damage. When you're talking millions and millions of dollars being spent every flood event, it wouldn't take long to pay for a project.
The one thing we realize from our group and locally, we're trying to solve a problem that's way beyond us. The flooding we have here is water that isn't ours. This bridge complex in Oslo drains 31,200 square miles through that bridge. This is a multi-state, multi-area problem, which we're trying to manage here locally. We certainly need help from outside of this area to help fix the problem and maintain the river for everybody's use.
So that's our little video, and thank you for letting us showing it. And it's sometimes challenging to show it as yes, you've seen on the Zooms for us. But if you want to look at it again, it's at fixtheflood.org. The video is there again. And our group has been working together for between 8 to 10 years in different stages. And we raised money on both states through the Minnesota DNR and North Dakota State Water Commission to study our area. And we had several agencies, we led it. We had several agencies involved with it. Houston Engineering led this, or did the study, came up with a 401-page study with some really good ways how we can approach this. And so what the video is presenting is we have a 3-phase approach to fix the bridges in Oslo, give us more opening, more channel area, fix it up at 317 north of Oslo, and then start protecting the interstates and the highway structures once we get the channel opening working properly. And then there's the study did about 40 different items that we looked at along the river, from abandoned driveways to east-west roads and so forth, that would help. We're trying to keep the water as close to the center of the river as possible. And so we're at a stage now where we have a good vision moving forward here, and we're doing the fundraising to do this. The 3 phases tally up to about $100 million. And we're working with the state agencies and federal to find the different funds to bring the money in for it. And so our group has been working closely with the watershed districts, Middle River Snake, Walsh County, and Grand Forks County. And the study with that funding came through the Middle River Snake and Walsh County watershed districts to do the study. We're seeing that connection as a way to balance and manage the projects as a whole going forward. And so we're proposing the joint powers that would involve the Middle River Snake on the Minnesota side, across the river Walsh County and Grand Forks County, and then BTAG, that 3-way entity to help manage this, because it's hard for the federals to put money into this when each state is split up by the state line and so forth and so on. So we're seeing this as a good opportunity to move forward, and it's what we've been working for. So we wanted to present to the commissioners so you guys had an understanding, guys and gals had an understanding what we were up to, so that asking you to help support your water board as they move forward, trying to join in with us. So we've presented this to the water boards, but Middle River Snake has signed on, Walsh County has signed on, and we're working with the Grand Forks Water Board to get the to sign on too. I think doing information for your commissioners will help support your water boards is what we're looking for.
Well, it's been very helpful. We really appreciate you coming to us, and please keep us informed as you move forward in getting the agreement. At that time, it'll be putting the finance package together so that we can move forward on the project. So thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
Madam Chair, this is Dave. I have a question. What do you really need from the county? Just the support of the water board? Do you need us to sign a letter of intent that we support you? And what are the financial considerations for counties? I mean, because we don't have a whole lot of extra money, as you know.
Yeah, no, do one of you other guys want to answer, or do you want me to answer?
I can try, James, if you wish.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Gary Babinski. I'm north of Oslo along the interstate, farmed up here, semi-retired. We've met with the Grand Forks Water Resource Board, and they reviewed all this, and I do believe they approve participating in this. And what they told us is that their next step was to visit with the Grand Forks County Board of Commissioners, you, to get approval to participate. And what we're trying to do is the two water boards, North Dakota, the Minnesota, there's only one, but it covers watershed, 3 or 4 different river watersheds because of the way the watersheds are set up. You know, North Dakota county lines, Minnesota by river basins. And we need to form this joint group. And the reason for the joint group is they will manage the project. The monies that come in from North Dakota, Minnesota, federal, emergency managements, whatever. There's a lot of arteries that need to flow, and they all tell us we need a organization to funnel it through. So the joint ventures would be the vessel, you might call it, that the monies would flow through, and that group would manage that money and manage the project. That group probably would hire an engineering firm, most likely Houston, since they've been designing this, or whomever, that would manage the project. But this joint powers would handle the checkbook. So we're requesting that you give the Grand Forks Water Resource Board approval to join into this joint venture. Is that clear? Is there any questions on that?
Thanks.
Down the road, there might be asking of the counties for some monies, but we're trying to get this as far away from the local funding as we can, because it is a multi-state, multi-area problem. As the video showed, it's the whole basin comes through our area and the bridges block it. And yeah, so it's not just our little area, it's a widespread problem.
Well, I think at this venture, what we'll plan to do is we will ask the Water Resource Board to come to the commission and talk to us about the project. You've given us a lot of introductory information, which is very helpful. But at this point, we need to hear from the water district to come in and talk about this. So I think that'll be our next point, is that we'll make a connection with them and we'll get them on our agenda.
Yeah, one person also, I believe that we met with the water was perhaps your county road supervisor, who's looking at this because of the damages you're receiving up north of Manville. And you know, one benefit, I was actually thinking about this morning, you know, you had all that flooding in the Manville area this summer from the big rains, and last fall, the golf course got ruined, whatever. This opening this up is gonna help that whole area a lot, that Turtle River Basin coming through. And this, the way we're gonna do some redesigning on the 17 bridge to get the flow earlier, to kind of lower some of these summer floods too. So there's definite benefit for this whole region. So in the one big example is our biggest flood. Can't put a year on it now, so many, but the road into Oslo, as you know, Oslo is marooned, and the longest time it was like 54 days before they could get people in and out. So emergency situations is, you know, very risky what's going on. The engineers have figured this out, so that would be in North Dakota, 1 inch of water for 2 days on part of the county road from North Dakota to Oslo. And if we had the same type of flood that we had back in, I believe it was 2011. So there's a lot of big benefit to this. The benefit ratio is strong. So
one thing I would add quick on Gary's comment with the emergency management, the Oslo Fire Department area is part of Grand Forks County as well. They cover about 4 miles of interstate in Grand Forks County. So something that to think about also.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Did you have anything else to say?
Well, I was going to add a little bit more how just a small example of how this joint power will work. As Derek said earlier, we're not saying that no funding will come from local townships or counties. But we're trying to minimize that. We see it as a project as a whole. And an example is our efforts will protect the interstate from going underwater. So we need to get interstate funds into some of the projects we have. And again, without the joint powers, it's hard to mechanize that funding to get out of interstate funding into protections for the interstate in a water project alongside of it. And so
Right, that becomes a big interstate commerce issue as well as an international commerce issue.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Well, thank you very much for all the information you shared, and we will plan on meeting with the Watershed District in the near future in the next meeting. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next item on our agenda is the highway engineer. Mr. West, are you available?
I am here, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I do have a few items of consideration that are on the agenda, and then I have 2 items, just an update and a general question for the board. I guess just since I'm following BTAG here, just to give my 2 cents real quick, is that I think from my perspective, it'd be good that we support that group. And, you talk about funding, that's a whole separate issue, but a joint powers would be good. So that way, if there ever was federal or state funding available, that there is a mechanism to, or a group to handle that. This would be the same idea as a joint water board for, say, like our legal drains that cross county lines that we have with Trail County right now too, a similar concept. So it certainly doesn't hurt us or hurt Grand Forks County to join that group anyways. So, but first item on the list we have is the BRR-0054050 contract. That is our box culverts going in Grace Township this summer. If the board remembers, that's the bond we got, bridge bundling grant with Walsh County through the Federal Accelerated Bridge Construction Program. That project is set to bid on February 5th. The contract presented before you is the agreement between the state DOT and Grand Forks County. Walsh County will have their own contract, even though there is one contractor contract. So that the 3 structures will be done in one contractor contract. There's 2 in Grand Forks, 1 in Walsh. We do have sufficient funds budgeted. 80% of the project is federally paid for. The contract would require the state's attorney, they have auditor on there, but our Director of Finance and Tax and Madam Chairman would be asked for a signature as well. Also on the local match certification would require the Director of Finance and Tax signature and Madam Chair's signature. And our local match, if you're wondering, is required. That's 2140. That's road and bridge for the form. Is there any questions on that?
So at this point, what you want is for the commission to approve the BRR 0054 contract with signatures of myself and of the fiscal officer.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Does somebody want to make a motion on that approval?
Motion to approve, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Ross. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Knopf. Is there any discussion? If not, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Another item on this subject is the construction engineering is eligible for federal aid funds, and since it is eligible, it would be wise of us to take advantage of that. However, with that, it also requires us to do an RFP for a solicitation on that. In discussing with Walsh County, we were thinking, well, it's our recommendation, we select one consulting engineer to do the engineering on the construction side, rather than two. That wouldn't make much sense and defeat the purpose of a bridge bundling program. But we do need to have some kind of a selection committee. And I guess our thoughts were, or when I say we, it was myself and the Walsh County Superintendent, that we would have two from each county on the selection committee. And if the board had any thoughts on who that should be, if okay, I would volunteer to be on that if the board so would desire.
I think that would be most appropriate. Who is the commissioner that's assigned to roads and bridges? Is that you, Ms. Knopf?
Yes, ma'am.
You could possibly have yourself and Commissioner Knopf for the Grand Forks committee.
Works for me.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, what you need is a motion to approve the North Dakota BRR 0054 contract with signatures, myself and the auditor, correct?
Madam Chair, we already have that.
We already have that, okay.
Yep.
Do we need a motion on this or not?
On the selection committee?
Yeah, no.
No.
Okay. All right, then we have your selection committee for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda I have is our department would like to do a paving job next year. We would like to utilize federal aid funds to do a portion of the job. Particularly the roads in the Inkster-Fordville Dam area are in poor shape and in need of an overlay. There's also, we call it County Road 17. You probably locally know it as Columbia Road, but is also in poor shape. We're hoping to be able to do all that in one project. All these roads are 20 to 25 years in age since they've last received an overlay or pavement. The ones that are eligible for federal aid, if we wanted to fully utilize our federal aid, we would need to advance 1 year's worth of federal aid in order to take advantage of that. Or we would have to make the job smaller, which would have some illogical termini, and that could be discussed if that was the wish of the board as to where we would start and stop. The option to advance would be similar to what we did in our 2017, which that process went well. The DOT is, they strongly encourage us to do this, but it does not cost the county any interest or fees or anything. The primary reason for approval of this at such an early stage, because normally if this was just county money, it would go through at the budget process, but being there's federal aid, it needs to get on the federal aid program sheet and get scheduled out in advance. And that would be part of the request, is to get the Madam Chair's signature on the federal aid portion in the packet. The other part of the request is I put together on the second sheet is an order of priority. Number one, I'd like to do the federal aid portion. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. If we have enough money to pay for the non-federal aid portion, I'd like to have that done as well too. The challenge is coming up with the local funds. I have some ideas and how to get there. I don't necessarily need that approval now. That can be done later once I have a way. Once I think I have a way that it'll work, then I'll bring it to the board, because right now I don't have a solution for the board, so I'm not going to ask for any approvals. Hopefully we can get maybe some money from the state or some prairie dog money in the future. But at this point, I'd just like to approve having the federal aid jobs done and approval on the federal aid sheet and chair's signature.
Okay, so we're looking for someone to approve make a motion on approving the federal aid sheet with the chair's signature. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second, Dave.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Do you have any questions of Mr. West? If you have no questions of Mr. West, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the formal agreement between Grand Forks County and Americus Township for the advancement of funds to cover the FEMA declaration. This was discussed and verbally approved, a month ago. It was in December. Our state's attorney put this agreement together, which formalizes the agreement. So, and we're looking for chair's signature on this, and we already have the township's signature on the agreement. Oh, and also Director of Finance and Tax signature.
So Nick,
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I was confused with this the last time we talked about it, and I still am. So what is it that is still owed to the contractor that's holding this up? How much is that? That's holding up the federal or the FEMA reimbursement?
One second.
I mean, I've gone through the numbers and they don't make sense to me. And so.
Go. I truly apologize. I don't have that in front of me here. I did have it at the last meeting.
$34,001.64.
That's what is that 34,000 is.
Okay, the total bill that the contractor did is worth $161,000 and change.
Yep.
Okay. FEMA paid
103.
103.
103,000.
That sounds right. Yes. Okay.
So that leaves
Correct.
$68,228, 68,000 roughly then that is unpaid, right?
Correct.
And so FEMA won't pay anymore until the contractor's paid. And I think that the contractor, I don't know what is still owed them. But we're paying a $34,000 or we're loaning a $34,000 figure to Americus Township. So I get confused with what I think might be 68,000 that's owed the contractor versus the 34,000 that we're going to loan and get reimbursed from FEMA. But that difference then of roughly $24,000, where's that money going to come from? And is Americas able to pay that towards the contractors so that we can get the FEMA reimbursement?
Correct.
Correct, they do have the money?
The money is coming from Americas Township property tax. For Americas Township's portion is they're responsible for, and they will have that money when they get their property tax money. Well, some of it already came in December, some in January, probably some in February. They will be able to pay their portion of their 15%. What we are doing is we're covering the difference between what FEMA has paid already and what they will pay.
Yeah, okay, and so and that's fine. I just wasn't sure where that $24,000 was coming from. And so if it's coming from property taxes, then fine. We'll just keep those property taxes, correct?
No.
No.
Our money, the
34,000 were
34,000 that we are loaning Americas Township, the county will get that money from FEMA once they get the certification that the township's been paid. It's a catch-22. They won't pay, FEMA won't give us the money until the contractor is paid.
Right.
But yeah, the township can't afford to pay them because they don't have the money or enough. They can
Well,
barely
and
afford-
I get that piece. And so I knew we were going to do the 34,000, but there was, but there was like 103,000 that FEMA's paid, but there was another 24,000 that I couldn't figure out where that money was going to come from that would get paid to the contractor so that the FEMA monies could be reimbursed. It's just not connecting with me. But if it's connecting with everybody else, that's fine.
It's clear in my head. Or
Well,
I
it
don't-
probably
I
is
don't read it
clear in
like that.
everybody else's head too. It's just, I can't
No,
get it
it's
straight.
not in mine completely either. Nick, would you kind of run through it from the top one more time, please?
Okay. I should have studied up again on this. I kind of forgot about it, or not forgot, but the Americas Township had damages that were worth $161,000. Okay? That's what they're owed from the flood event. FEMA will pay, well, and the state will pay 85% of that total. So that's that 136,000 is what, or 137,000 is what FEMA will pay.
And have paid.
No, they won't. They will pay a total of $137,281.80. But
They've paid
they won't-
103,000.
Thus far, they basically made a down payment because we went to them with this problem and said, well, how do we do this? And they said, well, we'll give you some money up front, because usually they don't give any money until the contractor's paid. I said, well, that's impossible. It just financially doesn't work for a township. But they were nice and they gave them 103,000 to help. but they will not release the remainder 34,000 until they have the proof, until the contractor says they've been paid, proof of payment.
Well, it's actually 68,000, the difference between
Well, yeah,
161,000 and 103 that they've paid, it's 68,000. We've agreed to pay 34 or loan. So there's an additional 24,000 that is going to be outstanding. And so that has to go to the contractor, and who's going to pay that is what my concern.
The township pays that 24,000 with their property tax money from their normal revenue.
Okay, so if they've paid it, then I'm cool with it.
Well, they will pay it. Like in next month.
Okay, so at this point, what we need is we need a signature, the chair's signature on this contract, so this can be taken care of. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion?
This is Tom. I'll make a motion to approve the contract with America's Township in order to resolve this problem with FEMA.
Okay, and is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? If there is no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried.
Thank you. I do have a couple updates for the board and one question, if it's okay, Madam Chair, to bring up.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, if the board maybe remembers from over a year ago, year and a half ago, I brought to the board about lighting intersections.
Yes.
And we were going to do that project last year in 2020, but it was cut due to funding revenue drops. However, we are resurrecting that project, and hopefully we do that this year, just so the board is aware. And some of these intersections you may have known, we did add little red blinky lights to them on the stop signs. That has been well received by the public as well too. So I have been in contact with Nodak Electric and Excel Energy about getting these projects done. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's budgeted already and part of our plan. So hopefully that is done, and that would be something that was recommended in our local road safety plan. That's just an update, so you might hear about that or see that going on. The other item has to do with back in December of 2019, I brought to the board about replacing 2 of our older bridges on our system. And I was hoping to do that in 2020 as well, but drop that project as well due to budget revenue problems. I'd like to resurrect that as well too. One challenge we do have with the 2 bridges is they are 2 historic bridges that require additional approval through State Historical Society and Army Corps and a 4F and a pretty substantial NEPA document. That process in itself is beyond the capabilities of our department internally. We don't have those folks that can write those kind of documents. Therefore, we would need to hire a consultant to do that work. This would be done with local funds. So the county has prerogative to hire whoever we want. However, if we wanted to, the DOT has offered to run it through their RFP process, similar to what our bridge projects that we just talked about here tonight. If we wanted to run it through that process as well too, we could. That would require, we would put an RFP out through the DOT, form a selection committee and interview them and go that route. I can tell you that we only need to hire a consultant on these projects to do the phase 1, the preliminary work. The design work, I've basically already done all that. And then we would handle the construction work internally in our department. Between a contractor force we would procure and our forces would do the work. So I'd like to get the opinion of the board if they have a preference on their thoughts on hiring a consultant, and if they have a preference on how we procure that consultant.
Any comments by the commission? I think one of the things that you'd want to consider is if there's a cost of going externally to hire a consultant as compared to having it done internally. Is there a cost?
Madam Chair, members of the board, yeah, absolutely. Anytime you hire someone, there's a cost. That would be something that I was planning on, the department has been planning on, and would have funds available to do that. I estimate 50 to 60,000 for both structures to do preliminary work or phase 1 permitting approvals.
And if that work was done, you do have a need to go externally outside of the department to do some of the prep work, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we would have to, because they, as an engineer, I'm not qualified to do that kind of historical and environmental work. It requires delineating wetlands and doing archaeological work. We just don't have anybody on staff with those abilities.
So obviously for these projects to get accomplished, we do need to go outside of the agency to have the prep work done. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you would need approval from the commission to make a motion to approve going outside of the highway department to get some of this work completed.
I guess I don't know if I necessarily need a motion. I'm looking for guidance on if they're okay with that and how to procure a consultant, if they have a preference.
I would say as long as we follow, in talking with Ms. Wamstead, and as long as we follow any requirements that are made by the state, and you work with her in doing that, I don't see that that would be an issue of the commission.
Madam Chair, this is just like any other project we've done. Grand Sky's a good example. NEPA is incredibly complicated, time consuming. And so we would, Mr. West and Ms. Lomstad, I could help too, and just put together a scope of work, put out RFPs for people that do this. It's pretty typical for a county business.
And obviously, your plan is to get the, once those arrangements are made, you'll finish it internally. And I have full confidence that you and your staff can accomplish that, the work that needs to be done on that bridge or those bridges.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I would say that yes, if you do not need any formal direction, please move forward in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have anything else, Mr. West?
I do not, other than it's been a great winter and we're saving a ton of money on fuel and plowing, so it's great.
Yes, that is a good thing to hear. Wonderful.
Yeah. We actually did a bridge replacement rehab project last week. Never done one in January before, so it was good.
Great, glad to hear it. Thank you very much for your report. Moving on, we'll go on to the Finance and Tax Director, Debbie.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I have a 2020 budget report for you. On the page in front of you, I have the budget to actual for every department in the general fund. Just go through that line by line. The human surface zone indirect costs, that's a new one. First year that we had it is 2020, and we didn't have a budget because it came in after budget time. Our expenses were 71,000, just over 71,000. That's telephone, copier, postage, office supplies, furniture and equipment, IT support, county vehicle expense. We received $583,279 from the state for our indirect costs. We had budgeted to receive $377,000. So we received over $200,000 more than we had budgeted. In 2019, we had billed the human service zone for rent, which totaled $369,900. The county fair, whatever we receive for the county fair in taxes is the money that we disperse. So that's why it's 95.81%, because that's what we received and that's what they received, 96,290. Insurance reserve, we are over our budget by 57,600, but we increased the value of our property by over $28 million or 26% in 2020. We did increase our 2021 budget $40,000 to $540,000. So we'll see how that goes in 2021. Advertising, we were just slightly over by $336. The correctional center was under by $661,000, and 72% or $480,000 was from salaries and benefits. They can't stay fully staffed. They were also under on their utilities by $43,000. Only 12% of their travel budget was used. Repairs were under by $45,000. Their medical drug line item was over almost $50,000. The commissioner's budget was under $81.50. Most of that was from travel. You only used 20% of your travel budget. Human resources, they didn't use any of their travel budget. They have most of their education and training left and $750 left in their professional fees. Overall, they were $12,000 under. A lot of it has to do with COVID. We were not traveling anywhere. Director of Administration, they underspent the base retention by about $7,500 and Grand Skies administrative fees about $4,700 and travel about $2,000 overall, about $14,000 under. District Court spent less than half of their budget. The Guardian ad litem was under just over $13,000 of the total of $16,700 that budget was under. The sexually dangerous was under $3,000, or they only spent just under $3,000 of their $20,000 budget. Our office, the Finance and Tax Office, was under $90,000 under, and of the $90,000 that we were under, $70,000 was from salaries and benefits. I had 2 new employees in 2020 that were not budgeted for in 2020 because they were hired late in the year in 2019. The state's attorney was under $106,000. $62,600 was from salary and benefits. $8,900 was from travel, and $6,000 from furniture and equipment. The victims' witness fees, we didn't have any in 2020. We didn't pay in 2020, but we did have $26,000 that went to CVIC in January for the amount from 2020. The county coroner budget was almost right on. The county recorders, did I say coroner?
Coroner.
I'm sorry. County recorder's budget was almost right on, but the only thing that is paid from their budget is salaries and benefits. The rest of their expenses come from the tech fund. Superintendent of schools was almost right on. Tax equalization under 24,000. Almost 12,000 from consulting services, spent less than half of their travel budget. And they were $3,200 under on education and training. The computer budget was 61,600 under. 20,000 was from network security. That's a state request to put that in, and the state never billed us, so I'm not sure. They were also under 10,500 for hourly employees, overtime, education, travel, training and travel. The employee benefits, we had a new expense that we hadn't had there before, not budgeted for. We were just over $800 in that one. Buildings and grounds was 3,600 or 36,000 under. 39,000 of that was from salary and benefits. So there was other things that were over, but their salaries and benefits were under 39,000. Elections, we were under $111,000. And that's with using a grant of $37,761 that we received. So we wouldn't have been under as much, but I'm very happy to report that we were under, because I was kind of wondering how it was all going to work. PSAP budget, we pay quarterly, whatever is budgeted. The county memberships, the North Dakota Association of County membership was $1,695 less than budgeted. The contracted services was over $500 for the young professionals because that was not budgeted for. Utilities, 48,000 under. The Cobb conference room was 3,000 under. The capital improvements budget was about $80,000 under. The sheriff was over 66,000. But all of that was offset by grant revenue. There was a new position, that Vision Zero coordinator, that's totally funded by the state. And so the expenses came out before we got the reimbursement. But we have now received 2 reimbursements. The state pays per month, and we have received 2 payments on that. Juvenile detention was under by 70,000. Salaries and benefits were under by 56.5. The mental health hearings under about 30,000. And there was about 24,000 for patient care spent. County coroner was under 17,000, and they had 85. They were under 8,500 on education and training, and $5,000 from travel. Emergency management was under 19,360. They had 5,300 for building rental and 3,000 EOC equipment that was not spent. Planning and zoning was under 24,610. They had 10,000 code enforcement that they did not use, 5,400 in board per diem, and $3,000 in miscellaneous that was not used. Miscellaneous, that includes our transfers. Our transfers are not, they're not budgeted for. We had, if you recall, we paid off a bond early that was on the parking ramp. That was $181,800. That was a transfer that was not budgeted for. And then at the end of the year, we transferred money that has since been reversed. But at the end of the year, we had the EUL grant that we paid for, and we have to pay for before we get reimbursed. And so that fund had a negative balance that we had to cover. About 40% of the travel budget was used in all of the general fund departments. There again, COVID. Overall, the general fund was underspent by 924,000. So it did very well. I'm going to go back to the revenue. So on this sheet, you see the general fund revenue. This is all the funds, all the budgeted funds. Mill levy funds, I should say. So we collected $1.2 million more in revenue than we had budgeted. Where did the money come from? State aid was over $616,000 more than we had budgeted. We had budgeted to receive 1.9 million and we received 2.9 million for all funds. Because I was just giving you the general fund at 616, but overall in all budgets, it would be $1 million more. State aid. So there was a lot of discussion about state aid and where we're going to be because of COVID and what was going to happen with state aid. And we are very conservative in the amount that we budget for state aid because you just never know. And the state doesn't know. When we get the estimate from them, it can be drastically different what we actually receive. So we want to make sure that we are very conservative in our number. So it is down from last year, but it's down about 10%. And the amount that we received this year is about 10% less. So we did well on the state aid. The recorder's fees are up $150,000. The human service zone indirect costs, we got $200,000 more than we had budgeted. Interest income, $173,000 more than we had budgeted. January and February 2020, we were at 1.77% interest. In March, it dropped to 1.25% in 2020, and then it went down to 0.25% for the rest of the year, and that's where we're currently at. Prisoner board payments, we received $435,000 more than we had budgeted. So that's very good that we're up that high in prisoner board payments. We were also under revenue on the following. We had maintenance for Northeast on this building. We put in $657,000 and it should have only been $567,000. There was an error made of about $90,000. So we were short there. Property tax, we received 94.53%. There was a little concern what people would be able to pay. And so it was a little bit short of the 95%, but not that much short. So $71,000 less than we had in our budget. Work release, we talked about that. That was taken away, but we had it in our budget before it was taken away. That was almost $58,000. State reimbursement for our emergency management is down $54,000, less than budgeted. And reimbursed for the federal transport is $40,000. So we ended the year with $1.3 million more in cash than we had last year because of the excess revenue and then the expenses that were less than budgeted in the general fund. The general fund also includes the parking ramp. There was discussion on the parking ramp and revenues were 46% of budgeted and expenses 59%. So we ended the year with cash for the parking ramp of $200,000. So we have $200,000 dedicated just for the parking ramp. Let's talk about the other funds, not just the general fund. Let's talk about the road fund. Now, Nick, if you're listening, the road fund here is only the 2140. It's not 2150. 2150 is not included in here and doesn't show on here because you don't levy for it. I could include it, but I have not. So the 2140 revenues were over and expenditures were under. Cash balance for 2140 was $817,035. Now, if you add in 2150, and Nick had asked me what the balance would be if you added both those together, and it would be 1.2 million. So Capital construction. We have two projects remaining in capital construction. One is the courthouse. That was approved by the vote of the people. Payoff date will be May 2022. That's next year. We have the balance at the end of 2020 was about 400,000. Also included in our capital construction is the correctional center. That will be paid off in December 2025. And there's about $5.5 million balance on those bonds. We have a negative cash balance of 109,000 on that project. And that's because we did not levy over time enough to pay those bonds. So the options for us would be either levy more in 2022 with the 2022 taxes or pay for that with the general fund. We could just transfer over money if you choose to do that. You could do one or the other, either make the transfer or just we'll levy for it in 2022. The weed and all the remaining funds listed here, they're all agency funds. So whatever we collect, that is what we dispersed. It's not that they spend more or spend less. All you're seeing is the revenue coming in and the revenue going out to them. That's all you see on those. And the CARES Fund. I want to talk about the CARES Fund. We have received $2.2 million, which includes the December billing, which we haven't been reimbursed yet, but we have billed them for. But once we receive that, it will be $2.2 million. We have spent $336,000 through January 15th. We have also committed another $82,450 for correctional center nurse, which has not been hired yet, and committed another $178,480 for a rural school nurse through public health. So that totals about $600,000 with everything. The CARES funding was allocated to help avoid increasing property taxes. The amount we received was to be significantly greater than the amount we would have received based on reimbursement for direct COVID expenditures. The CARES funding is being used every day and the balance will continue to decrease. We have ongoing costs for PPEs, sanitizing supplies, and overtime for nurses at the correctional center. I'm not sure of our future needs. We will, what the needs for those funds will be, but I can tell you, and I know that we discussed this at the Public Safety and Infrastructure meeting, that how you can use these funds. The state allows you to use it however you need to use it, and you just need to show that you're reducing the tax burden for property taxpayers. But like I said, it's ongoing every day. We're spending that money. So things went very well for Grand Forks County in 2020. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Debbie?
This is Tom.
Yes.
I have a question, Ms. Nelson, about the correctional center money. You're talking about pay that money out of the general fund, or we could do that. And it seems like if we have this carryover money, we could do that and not put it on the tax rolls for next year. Does that seem reasonable?
Oh, the capital construction? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so we're short for whatever reason on the correctional.
Oh,
fund.
yes, yeah, take it out of the general fund. I would like a motion to make that payment out of the 110,000 to transfer. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and it seems like that's a reasonable way of doing it.
Yes, that would be great.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we transfer that $110,000. Maybe there's a little extra, whatever, out of the general fund to take care of the shortage on the correctional center project.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? If there is no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I think this was a good report to hear. Thank you very much. All right, moving on in our agenda, Director of Administration, Mr. Ford.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, just one quick thing. I do have the amended agreement between the county and the city for the public health school nursing. You'll recall January 5th meeting, Ms. Swanson.
It's already approved and I do
Oh,
have
it's
it.
done.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have nothing, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Okay, then State's Attorney, Ms. Wamstead.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I have one brief update. If you recall, we previously discussed a property tax appeal from IRET that was appealed to the district court. The North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund appointed Mitch Armstrong to represent the county on that matter. For a while, that matter was stayed pending a North Dakota Supreme Court opinion that was to be issued on a related matter, which has now been issued. We were notified today that the IRET attorney has motioned to dismiss the appeal of the decision of this board to the district court. And so long as that's accepted by the court, that will end the process for that property tax appeal.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that information. Anything else, Ms. Wamstead?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Ms. Wamstead.
Yes, madam. Yes, Ms. Knopf.
What is the status of that? You know, was it 2-3 years ago we entered into a contract or with an attorney, a law firm regarding the opioid settlement? Do you know if anything ever came from that? Maybe you briefed us and I have forgotten, but.
Madam Commissioner Knopf, members of the commission, I have not received any updates recently on that litigation. To the best of my knowledge, it is still pending. I think it slowed down a little bit due to COVID, but I certainly can reach out to the firm that is representing the county to see if there's any recent updates.
Well, if you have time and nothing to do, but I was just curious. I didn't know if we had talked about that and I just had forgotten, but I ran across my folder with that and I thought, I'm going to ask Haley. So thank you.
Yep, I'll let you know what I find out.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, committee reports. The first one is Public Safety and Infrastructure Committee.
Which I am the chair. Okay, we met the other day and we talked about capital improvements money, things that we wanted to move on to the full commission. Among those items are the request was made by the Human Service Zone carpet and paint for the second floor COB of $40,000. We wanted to move that on. Buildings and Grounds wanted a tractor with a cab and attachments for $40,000. We decided to put that on hold at this time. Buildings and Ground wanted to update the fire alarm monitoring system for $20,000. We wanted that to move on. Buildings and Grounds, the Cobb east and west entrance doors needed repairs. $15,000. We wanted that to move on. Buildings and Grounds, they wanted to remodel the bathrooms on the at least one floor. And that, we put that on hold. That was a $50,000 request per floor. Buildings and Grounds also wanted boiler piping replacement, and that was $10,000. We wanted that to move on. The Highway Department requested a certain percentage, I believe, for repairs. That request was for $75,000. Was that the actual?
No, he requested 50%, or he wanted $95,000.
Okay, and we moved it down to $75,000. So we wanted that to move on. The Sheriff's Department, mobile portable radios, having to do with the siren project of $56,100. We wanted that to move on to the full board. And the Correctional Center body scanner for $175,000. We want to put a hold on that for right now. And Veteran Service kitchen replacement for $46,311. We wanted to put that on hold. So the total that we wanted to move on was $216,100, leaving a balance of $375,756. Was there any other comments from other commissioners about what we wanted to move on?
This is Dave. The hold is simply to see if we need other things done by summertime or whenever else. Hopefully they'll be done. These things can be done, but just didn't dare do it in January, I guess.
Yeah, that's why we put some of those items on hold. So, so I guess I'm presenting that to the full board to move on. Madam Chair.
So does somebody want to make a motion to move forward those requests?
I'll make a
Madam
motion,
Chair.
Madam Chair.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Then the motion is carried. So the commissioners that are working with those specific groups, make sure that you forward that on to them so they're aware of some of the items that they should be looking at in the near future. That would be good. Do you have anything else to report, Commissioner Ross?
MPO tomorrow. Sounds like they have COVID, so everything is on Zoom. So other than that, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Falk, do you have anything to report?
No, I think I've talked about everything I did or was involved in, so let's move on for the night. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Engen.
No, same as Tom's report. I just went to 3 meetings, but we've talked about most of it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Knopf?
No, just that I participated in the Public Safety or Infrastructure Committee meeting on the 13th. Also had a Fair Board meeting on the 13th. Question is that should they be planning for a fair? And I said, yes, because they do have to get their contracts and things like that in place, but with the understanding that things could change depending upon the status with COVID. So they are moving forward with that. No discussion has been had yet about fundraising for that group. Library board meeting tomorrow at 4. And so that'll be our first meeting with the 3 new board members that the mayor has appointed. So outside of that, that is all I have to offer.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you. And as for myself, the Human Service Board met prior to this meeting today. Obviously, we do have some funding in reserves, but don't get too comfortable because the social services at the state level can take that, move that, change that. And so just so you're aware that that doesn't remain in the funds of Grand Forks County. On Thursday of this week is the Airport Authority meeting. Their numbers are moving up. I think there has been some additional CARES funds funding that has come into smaller and regional airports. So that has also made a big difference. Other than that, I think that's all I have to report. Unfinished business, new business, the 2021 agricultural values.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, it's just informational. Ms. Skadias is recommending no egg increase for 2021.
And I believe she had sent some information to all of us so we could take a chance to look at that. Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, then I need someone to adjourn this meeting.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same